And so, Chrissy,
Hey,
Chris,
Scotty.
how are you? You
I'm
doing
good.
all
How
right?
are you?
You thought you were getting away from this tropical mess, didn't you? Leaving Myrtle Beach, moving up to the
I
upstate
know.
South Carolina.
This is my first tropical system in 10 years where I haven't been on the coast. So it's definitely been a little different this time around, looking at what we're going on up here in the upstate versus, of course, forecasting for the coast. As you just heard from Rob and Eric, of course, the water is always a big deal down there. So it's a little different now. But you know that, Scotty, being up here in the upstate as well.
Yeah, this is different. We don't have to worry about the storm surge up here. Sometimes the
Yeah.
wind, sometimes not the wind. But this event looks like for the area that you guys cover there in Greenville-Spartanburg up to Asheville and even into the western part of North Carolina, it's going to be the rain component. And it looks like we could see some pretty hefty rainfall totals in some of the areas. So, what is the latest that you guys are watching?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at, for most of us, are probably looking at about 4 to 6 inches. We may see some slightly lower rainfall totals a little further in to the west, closer to the Tennessee border. You might get more in that 2 to 4 inch range. But then there's also this kind of area that we're highlighting that there's a possibility we could be getting upwards of that 6 inches there. And that's going to be more so into the mountains. That's going to be up towards the Tryon area of North Carolina, kind of this little strip there up in the mountains that we're looking at some of those higher rainfall totals to pass over. And that's, as you said, Scotty, that's really the one big thing that we're kind of looking at. Although we are looking at maybe some of those tropical storm force winds, depending on how well this storm kind of regenerates itself once it gets out over the Atlantic. Once it makes landfall again, where exactly does that center track in relation to us could really dictate whether or not we're talking some tropical winds, especially during the day on Friday. We could be looking at maybe some of those 35 to even maybe as high as 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We're talking more in the gusty range rather than sustained winds. But that's certainly something that we're looking at, especially for the upstate. Once you get in the mountains, I think the winds are going to start to die down a little bit. But as you said, yeah, it looks like the rain is going to be our biggest issue up in the mountains. And we talk about last year being so quiet for the Carolinas, where we didn't have a single landfalling hurricane or tropical system in South Carolina. Of course, Scotty, you and I saw each other at Ed's big pizza party. Ed
Yeah.
Piotrowski threw that big pizza party. But what we kind of have to remember is that like these inland impacts can play a big role because here it was the mountains of North Carolina that were impacted by Tropical Storm Fred last year. And we actually had several deaths reported in the mountains of North Carolina because of the flooding tropical system. So a lot of times we look at this and we say, oh, it's just rain for the inland areas. But when you get a significant amount of rain, that certainly does play a role in our concern level in terms of those impacts there. I will say we have been very dry, so we are definitely in need of some beneficial rain. I just don't know that 6 inches in about a day and a half is exactly what we're looking for. That might be a little much for us.
It seems like, and I know we're going to have Brad Panovich on here in a minute, and he could probably relate to this. It seems like when the Carolinas kind of get in that drought, it takes a tropical system to get us out, and it just seems like year after year that's how we get out of these droughts is we get these big tropical systems moving in. One other thing, Chrissy, that
Yeah.
I think you all will be watching is the concern for landslides, and especially in the mountainous areas. Those are possible as well. So I'm sure
Sure.
you guys are keeping your eye on that and your head to the ground and listening for those reports coming out, especially out of your mountain counties.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we don't really have to go too far back actually to see when we're talking about this 4 to 6 inch range for some of these mountain areas. Just several weeks ago, we had some pretty heavy rains across the area. It wasn't even necessarily tropically driven that was bringing in those rains, but we had several reports of flooding, especially in those higher elevations where it doesn't take a whole lot for those creeks to really start to overturn their banks and get up, and then all of a sudden you start to see these flooding reports coming out of the mountains specifically. And that was just about 3 weeks ago that we had some of that going, 3-4 weeks ago that we had some of that flooding that was non-tropical related. So we're talking very similar rainfall totals in some of these areas for this weekend. Specifically, I think the Friday is going to be our high impact day, and into Saturday morning. Of course, I know all the Clemson fans are watching very carefully Saturday morning. College game day is supposed to be here in Clemson. So we'll see if it gets kind of pulled off. But I do think that Friday into Saturday morning is probably going to be our high impact time. Heavy rains across the area.
It's good that you mentioned that. We have our little internal chat here, and Jared was wanting to make sure we mentioned the Clemson NC State game. It's a primetime game. Like you said, ESPN Game Day going to be there. What does it look like for the actual game? Do you think it looks like maybe we could kind of get some at least the heavier rain out of here by kickoff?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that, Scotty. I think that by the time we get into the afternoon, this is going to be a little more hit and miss with the rain. The big question will be, is damage is done before we get there? How wet is that field? But yeah, I think by the time we get into the afternoon, at least the rain will have started to lighten up. The heaviest of it will be behind us. The winds will be dying down. So I think that come game time, we're in a much better position. It'll just be a big question of what did the rain that we've already gotten kind of done to the field, unfortunately, for those football players, and of course for the tailgaters out there excited to be out there on Saturday morning. Not going to be the nicest of days for sure.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're a Carolina fan, right? South Carolina.
I am a Carolina fan, but I'm doing my best to not show my bias.
So I'm assuming that you're pulling for Ed Piotrowski's NC State Wolfpack then Saturday night.
Yes, Ed and I are definitely on the same page this week.
All right. Well, Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us. And how can we follow you on social media and on TV?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm at home, unlike the gentleman before me. They're at work tonight, but I'm on my day off because I work weekends. So I'm at Fox Carolina, up here, as you said, in the Western Carolinas, part of Northeast Georgia as well. We cover, and I work specifically Saturday and Sunday nights, and then I'm kind of in flux during the rest of the week. Most of the time I'm there Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, helping out my chief Kendra, getting you the weather in the evenings. On social media, Chrissy Kohler on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm in both places. You can hit me up anytime, any place.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck down there. Stay dry, and we'll talk soon.
You guys too. Stay safe, everyone.